Imagine waking up inside a novel filled with gods and monsters, only to find out you've been reincarnated as a tiger. That's the reality here, in a world where the mountains are as beautiful as they are deadly. In the dead of night, a hunting dog is found slaughtered. No barking, no tracks, just a clean, silent kill. Two veteran hunters, Nangseon and Song, realize they're not dealing with a typical predator. The traps they set were completely bypassed, yet the dog was taken right from under their noses. Nangseon is sweating. He's sure the beast should have walked right into his trap, but there's no sign of it. Song has a bad feeling about this and suggests they head back down the mountain immediately. Nangseon tells him to keep it down so he can think, but the panic is starting to set in. It hits him they weren't the ones doing the hunting. They've walked straight into a trap. The forest falls into a chilling silence. Nangseon orders the men to abandon the gear and stick together until they reach the valley. But it's already too late. A sudden strike sends blood flying through the air. Nangseon watches in horror as one of his men is snatched away in an instant. A massive clawed paw pins a hunter to the earth, making quick work of him. From the shadows emerges Sangun, a colossal tiger engulfed in a blue flaming aura. The remaining hunters can barely process the sight of the legendary owner of the mountain. One man desperately tries to load his crossbow, but his hands are shaking too much to function. He fumbles with the weapon, his face pale as death. Sangun lets out a thunderous roar right in the man's face. A single swipe of a claw is all it takes to end the struggle. A lone hunter stands trembling in the mist, the only one left. He finally understands that they've disturbed a being that should have been left alone. It's the owner of the mountain, Sangun. The beast stands tall, a terrifying force of nature cloaked in spectral blue light. With a glare of his glowing red eyes, he asserts his dominance over the mountain. Meanwhile, down in the village nearby, the atmosphere is just as heavy. The locals whisper that day has finally come again. It's the night of the sacrifice, a ritual meant to appease the mountain god. They talk about the sacrifice as if it's just another piece of livestock. This year, the offering is a girl from a slave family. She's what they call a white blood ghost, a rare child with silver-white hair and blue eyes. At the local manor, a nobleman known as the young master comes out to finalize the exchange. A grieving nanny brings the girl forward, her small frame hidden under a heavy cloak. The nobleman tells the old woman to stay behind and orders the child to follow him. The girl Choa huddles under her cloak, her small hands wiggling in fear. The young master snaps at her to hurry up, showing zero empathy for her fate. A palanquin is waiting in the courtyard to carry her away. They carry her through the silent streets of the village. Inside the dark box, Choa sits alone, clutching her clothes in terror. High above, the wind whips across the jagged peaks of the mountain. The carriers begin the grueling climb up the steep slopes of Baeksan. The men are huffing and puffing, the weight of the task taking its toll. Deep into the dark woods they go, delivering the child to the mountain's owner. One of the carriers suddenly comes to a halt. He gives a quick nod to his partner, signaling that this is the spot. Without wasting a second, they drop the palanquin and turn tail. The men sprint back down the mountain as fast as they can, leaving the child all alone. The wind howls around the isolated palanquin sitting on the dark ridge. Inside, the structure rattles violently against the freezing gusts. A small foot clad in a traditional shoe gingerly steps out onto the grass. Choa emerges, looking like a tiny speck against the massive forest stretching out before her. She looks up, stunned by the sheer scale of the wilderness. She covers her mouth in awe, realizing just how far from home she's been taken. She reminds herself that she'll be meeting the mountain god soon, so she needs to keep it together. But her hands are trembling so hard, she can barely grip her cloak. The weight of her fate sinks in. She's the one chosen to be the bride of the beast. She gasps for air in the oppressive silence of the woods. "It's so dark," she whispers, her breath hitching in the cold. Paralyzed by fear, she realizes she can't take another step forward into the shadows. Suddenly, a deep, rumbling voice cuts through the darkness, demanding to know who she is. Choa freezes, her eyes wide with terror as her heart skips a beat. The shock sends her collapsing to the ground, her silver hair splaying out as she hits the dirt. The voice booms again, more impatient this time, repeating the question. She stutters, trying to find the words to explain her presence. She clenches her fist, gathering every ounce of courage she has left to speak. "I'm Choa," she shouts. "The one who married you. I'm your bride, my husband." A pair of glowing red eyes stare back at her from the deep shadows. She holds her breath, wondering if her desperate claim actually worked. Sangun steps fully into the light, a mountain of muscle and blue flames looming over her. He looks down at the tiny human with a mix of curiosity and irritation. Choa gulps, her throat bone dry as she waits for his next move. She stands up, explaining that her sisters were too sick to come, so she had to be the patient one. She looks up with pleading blue eyes, begging her new husband to take care of her. Sangun isn't moved. He lets out a low growl that vibrates through her very bones. Terrified, Choa squeezes her eyes shut, bracing for a strike that doesn't come. Instead, he lets out a deafening roar, telling her to get the hell out of his forest. He doesn't care if she's a priestess or just a girl, he simply wants her gone. Choa stands frozen as the shock of the rejection settles over her. Her lip starts to quiver, the terror and abandonment finally breaking her spirit. She bursts into a loud, heart-wrenching wail that echoes through the mountain peaks. Sangun is caught off guard, staring at the crying child with a look of pure exasperation. "Damn it," he snarls, his frustration reaching a boiling point. He tries to get her to stop, but the more he shouts, the harder she cries. His glowing eyes narrow as he watches her face scrunch up in absolute misery. Overwhelmed by the noise, the legendary tiger covers his ears with his massive paws, admitting he hates the sound of people crying. Sangun pleads with the child to stop her endless crying, baffled by her sudden outburst. Choa wails that she's only crying because he was so mean to her, reminding him that she's supposed to be his wife. Sangun lets out a heavy, weary sigh, his anger replaced by exhaustion. He reaches out a massive paw, telling her it's too late to go anywhere and that she should just stay the night. Suddenly, the tiger is startled by a loud, wet sneeze from the little girl. Choa giggles, wiping her runny nose directly onto Sangun's soft, orange fur. The legendary mountain owner stares down at his paw, disgusted by the sticky trail of snot she left behind. As the morning sun begins to rise, birds chirp softly in the distance. Sunlight filters through the trees, signaling the end of a very long night. Choa is fast asleep, curled up snugly against the tiger's warm flank. Sangun watches her, amazed that she can sleep so soundly after everything that happened. He gazes at her with his intense red eyes, lost in thought. He notes how rare it is to see someone with hair as white as snow, the mark of a white blood ghost. He thinks of the legend, a woman who mastered blood curses only to be consumed by them. He finds it hard to believe this fragile child could one day become such a terrifying entity. Still, the blood of such a creature is a legendary elixir that every beast in the world would kill for. Sangun knows his temper is short, and keeping a child like her around is a recipe for disaster. He stares down at the small, peaceful figure tucked under his arm. Choa wakes up with a sleepy smile, greeting her husband as the morning light hits her eyes. She blushes deeply, realizing that they've officially spent their first night together. Sangun immediately gets up, telling her to stop talking nonsense and head back home. Choa protests, her eyes wide as she explains that she can't possibly go back. Sangun's eyes narrow as he asks who would dare threaten to hit her if she returned. She whispers the name of Master Baek, her voice trembling with the memory. Sangun realizes the villagers didn't send a bride, they sent a human sacrifice. The dark reality of her situation hangs heavy in the air. Choa clasps her hands together, begging him not to abandon her since she's good at laundry and isn't picky about food. Sangun knows that if he sends her back, she'll just be cast out again, or worse. He pictures her lying broken and forgotten in the dirt, a fate too cruel for any child. He closes his eyes, trying to block out the complicated thoughts of responsibility. Suddenly, his ears prick up as a brilliant idea strikes him. He smiles to himself, thinking about how smart he is for finding a solution. He tells Choa to follow him, leading her deeper into the lush mountain landscape. With a heavy thud, it dropped several large ginseng roots onto the ground right at her feet. Choa looks down, confused by the strange-looking plants. He explains that they are wild ginseng and worth a fortune, enough to buy her a new life in Ungal village. Choa stares at him blankly, repeating that she's his wife and shouldn't be sent away. Sangun roars in frustration, telling her to stop daydreaming and just do what he says. He uses his tail to shove her cloak toward her, insisting she take the ginseng and go. Choa holds the roots tightly but refuses to budge, stubbornly insisting that she only wants her husband. She is startled by the sudden intensity in the tiger's gaze. Sangun's aura flares with a menacing blue fire as he warns her to stop testing his patience. Sangun reminds himself that he is the ruthless ruler of Baeksan Mountain. He is the one destined to reach enlightenment and create a divine body, not play babysitter. He snaps at Choa, barking that she is absolutely not his wife. Choa holds the expensive ginseng close, looking lost as she explains she has no idea how to get down the mountain. Sangun lets out another long sigh, realizing he won't be rid of her that easily. He begrudgingly kneels down, telling her to climb on his back. He warns her that he won't say it twice, his tone sharp and impatient. Suddenly, Choa grabs a handful of fur right between his eyes to pull herself up. Sangun yells in pain, telling her to be careful as she scrambles over his head. He grits his teeth, wishing she would have just climbed up from the side like a normal person. Choa gasps as she finally settles onto his broad, powerful shoulders. She looks out over the vast mountain range, mesmerized by the breathtaking view from such a height. She cheers excitedly, bragging that she's the first person to ever ride the legendary mountain owner. With a determined shout, she points forward and tells her husband to go. Sangun roars back that he isn't her husband, as he takes a massive, soaring leap off the cliff. They land on a lower ridge, overlooking a village that Choa thinks looks like a pair of buttocks. Sangun grumbles for her to stop pulling on his ears, because it actually hurts. Choa quickly lets go and apologizes, her face flushing with embarrassment. She stares at him with wide, innocent eyes, a strange look passing over her face. She suddenly leans forward and gives him a big, affectionate squeeze, giggling happily. Without another word, Sangun nudges her off his back and she lands softly on the grassy ground. He turns around and starts walking away, bluntly stating that they should never see each other again. Choa panics and lunges forward, grabbing his long, striped tail with all her might. Sangun lets out a startled, high-pitched scream as she yanks him back, refusing to let him go. Sangun is losing his mind because this kid won't let go of his tail, and apparently it's a very sensitive spot for a tiger. Choa isn't backing down one bit, shouting that he's getting exactly what he deserves for trying to leave. She insists that since they've spent their first night together, he's officially her husband and has to take responsibility. Sangun tries to point out the obvious, that tigers and humans don't exactly get hitched, but Choa is literally hanging onto his tail for dear life. The girl keeps yelling about her marriage vows, leaving the giant beast completely baffled by her persistence. He just gave her a priceless wild ginseng root so she could go live a good life, but he's starting to realize she has zero interest in money. Choa hurls the expensive root right into the dirt, screaming that she doesn't want grass or roots, she just wants to be with him. Sangun stares at the discarded treasure in disbelief, shocked that a human would just toss away something that valuable. He realizes he's going to have to change his approach if he ever wants to get her off this mountain. So he tries a different angle, sell the ginseng in the village, get rich, and then she can use the money to get married. The word marriage hits her like a lightning bolt, and her eyes go wide as she realizes he might actually be right. Suddenly she's all smiles, clutching the ginseng and promising to be back before he even knows she's gone. Sangun plays it cool, telling her to take all the time she needs, though he's probably just relieved she's finally leaving. He watches from the mountain as her tiny figure runs off into the distance. She's so excited she trips and eats dirt, but she's back on her feet in a second, laughing it off. She keeps going, disappearing into the morning mist with the ginseng root in hand. Sangun stands there in silence, his red eyes fixed on the path she took. He lingers for a long moment, watching the forest where the child vanished. Down in the village, an old pharmacist is busy tending to his medicine jars outside his shop. Choa walks right up to him, calling out to the grandpa to show him what she's brought to sell. The old man turns around and catches a glimpse of her glowing blue eyes, freezing in place. He lets out a yell and falls flat on his back, convinced he's just seen a literal ghost. After a few coughs, Choi Chil-sam tries to get his dignity back, asking if she's actually there to sell something. He takes the root from her hand, but as soon as he gets a good look at it, his eyes go wide. He can barely believe what he's holding, realizing this isn't just some common herb. When he asks where she got it, Choa casually tells him her husband gave it to her. She repeats the plan, sell the root so she can finally get married for real. Chil-sam realizes this ginseng is easily 300 years old, and this kid has absolutely no clue how much it's worth. He looks at her innocent face, seeing just how easy it would be to take advantage of her. A dark thought crosses his mind about swindling her and making a fortune for himself. Meanwhile, Choa is off in her own world, daydreaming about what her big wedding day is going to look like. The old man sighs and shakes off the greedy thoughts, knowing he can't bring himself to trick a young child. He tells her he doesn't have nearly enough money to buy it, and sends her to a rich man named Kim instead. Back up on the mountain, the birds are chirping as Sangun settles in for a peaceful meal. He thinks to himself that meat always tastes better when you can eat it in peace without a child screaming at you. Munching on a bone, he tells himself that the world only belongs to those who aren't idiots. He grumbles about how he almost lost his dignity to a little girl, but then a tiny doubt creeps in. He shakes his head violently, trying to get rid of the worry that she might actually find her way back. He tries to convince himself he's a fearsome mountain tiger who would never get attached to a human child. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes through the air, asking him if he's worried. Sangun looks up, startled, asking if they're talking about the kid. The voice clarifies that it isn't the girl they're concerned about, leaving him more confused than before. Sangun tries to play it off like he's only worried about the precious ginseng he gave away. Voices in his head began to list all the ways humans might rob or kidnap a defenseless child like Choa. Sangun's eyes widened as the voice in his head dropped a bombshell. They might even kill the girl just to get their hands on that ginseng root. In a village nearby, a local noble named Degam is in the middle of a massive meal when he's interrupted. He's clearly annoyed, slamming the table because he's out of alcohol and doesn't want to be disturbed while he's eating. His servant nervously explains that a child showed up with a recommendation from the local pharmacist. Degam looks at the wild ginseng, and his jaw nearly hits the floor. He's stunned, realizing he's looking at a literal treasure. He can't wrap his head around how a tiny girl managed to get her hands on something of this size. Then he takes a closer look at her snowy white hair and bright blue eyes, and things start to click. He narrows his eyes and asks her straight up if she's a slave. Choa looks at him innocently, wondering how he could have known that. Degam's face twists into a sinister grin as he realizes she's the sacrifice that was supposed to be dead. He points an accusing finger, shouting that she must have run away and stolen the ginseng from somewhere. Choa tries to defend herself, yelling that her husband actually gave it to her. Degam just gets angrier, calling her a liar and ordering his servant to seize the root and kick her out. The muscular servant reaches out to grab her, but Choa holds onto the root with everything she has. She screams at him to stop, but the man is twice her size and won't let up. The servant is actually shocked at how much strength she has, struggling to pry it from her hands. He ends up throwing her to the ground, and Choa lets out a cry as she hits the floor. Degam yells that she brought this beating on herself by refusing to hand over what she stole. He tells the servant to use as much force as he needs to get that treasure. The man raises his hand to strike her again, determined to break her stubbornness. Later that night, Choa is wandering back into the forest, bruised and sobbing about losing the gift her husband gave her. Her face is bloodied and tear-streaked as she limps through the dark woods. She calls out for her husband, her voice echoing through the silent trees. She looks around frantically, wondering why he isn't coming to help her. She's still crying, pleading for him to show himself. She tries to run, shouting his name into the gloom, but her strength is fading. She's gasping for breath, barely able to keep moving. She stands there shivering, looking absolutely defeated with her clothes torn and dirty. Deep in the shadows, glowing red eyes begin to appear, drawn by the sweet smell of her white blood. The forest spirits start to encircle her, mocking her for being all alone in the dark. They call her a poor thing, telling her that the sadness must be unbearable. The shadowy monsters loom over her, promising they'll stay together forever and never abandon her. Choa just stares at them, her spirit seemingly broken as they tell her to just stay still. A massive shadowy mouth opens wide, ready to swallow her whole. The spirits are salivating, nodding that she's only 4 years old and will be a delicious treat. But then a thunderous roar shakes the entire forest, and Sangun appears, his eyes glowing with absolute fury. He looms over her with blue flames erupting from his mouth, asking the spirits how they dare lay a finger on her. Choa looks up, seeing her giant protector standing between her and the monsters. He stares down at her bloodied face, his voice chilling as he demands to know exactly who did this to her. Sangun towers over the battered girl, his eyes burning with a terrifying intensity as he looks down at her bruised face. His voice rumbles through the forest like a low growl, demanding to know which bastard was responsible for hurting her. Choa sits on the ground, still reeling from the beating she took. Sangun looks down at her, his voice low as he asks who did this. Choa reaches out, her small hand gripping the tiger's fur. Tears stream down her bruised face while she stays silent. A single tear drops into the dirt. Under the purple sky, the little girl finally lets out a loud, heartbroken sob. Meanwhile, a heavy bag of gold coins thuds onto a table. Inside a wealthy estate, Dgam rewards his servant for bringing in the stolen ginseng. The servant grins, confident that his men outside can handle any trouble. Dgam couldn't care less, he's too busy admiring his new prize. The servant walks out into the courtyard, already planning his night at a bar. He suddenly stops, hearing a strange sound from the gate. A bolt of blue energy slams right into the main entrance. The gate shatters into splinters, sending the servant stumbling back. Smoke fills the air as the guards scramble to see what's happening. A small silhouette appears through the haze, catching everyone off guard. The servant draws his weapon, furious that someone had the nerve to break in. Choa stands there, her face covered in bruises but her eyes fixed on them. The guy loses it, yelling that he'll finish what he started and beat her to death. That's when Sangun looms over her, his eyes glowing with pure rage. The sight of a flaming tiger is enough to make the guard's heart stop. Inside, a door slides open. Dgam sticks his head out, screaming for everyone to shut up. He doesn't get a second sentence before his servant comes flying through the wood. The official's eyes go wide as he realizes something is very wrong. His servant is slumped against the wall, completely knocked out. Sangun walks right in, asking if these are the bastards who laid a hand on the kid. Dgam can only stare, his heart hammering against his ribs. The tiger stands over the trembling guards, wreathed in blue flames. He calls them the lowest kind of scum for ganging up on a child. Sangun bares his teeth, ready to tear them apart. A massive paw comes down, pinning another guard to the ground. He promises to pay them back for every single hit Choa took. Suddenly, Choa reaches out and begs him to stop. Sangun freezes mid-strike, completely surprised by her voice. She tells him she doesn't want him to become a murderer, she just wants the ginseng back. Sangun starts to calm down, the red glow in his eyes fading. Choa looks at him with pleading eyes, hoping he'll listen. Sangun sighs and scratches his head, clearly annoyed that he has to hold back. He turns his attention to Dgam, making the official jump in terror. Sangun demands the wild ginseng. Dgam doesn't wait for a second warning, frantically handing over the box. The official tries to suck up, claiming he was just keeping the ginseng safe for its rightful owner. Sangun isn't buying the act and roars at him to shut his mouth. The man collapses to the ground, shivering and begging for mercy. Sangun tells him he'd be shreds by now if it weren't for the kids showing him pity. He makes it clear that her mercy is the only reason the guy is still breathing. Then he demands every bit of edible food in the house before letting out one last roar. The official doesn't hesitate for a second, promising to do exactly as he's told. He scrambles to get his servants moving, agreeing to deliver everything to the mountain immediately. Before the guy can even blink, the tiger and the girl are gone in a flash of blue energy. He slumps onto the floor, completely drained by the sheer terror of the encounter. He realizes the girl he beat was actually the bride of the mountain deity. Back at the mountain, the quiet forest life resumes as if nothing happened. Sangun is back in his lazy spot, looking like he's already over the whole village drama. But now, his home is packed with all the supplies and livestock he forced the wealthy official to hand over. Choa is settling in nicely, picking out some wild raspberries she found. She tries to feed one to her husband, who isn't exactly thrilled about the attention. She gives him a huge smile, asking if the berry tastes good. Sangun just stares, thinking to himself that his plans for her haven't changed. He stands up to leave, and Choa immediately wants to know where he's going. He says he's going out for a drink, and the girl starts running after him, refusing to be left behind. They trek deep into the woods until they reach a hidden, glowing pond. Choa is already wearing out, grabbing onto the tiger's thick fur to keep up. Sangun tells her they're almost there, as they step out onto the edge of the magical water. A single drop ripples across the surface, and a voice welcomes the ruler of Baeksin. A massive golden fish with horns pops up, asking the tiger if life has been worth living lately. Choa can't help but giggle, thinking a talking fish is the funniest thing she's ever seen. Sangun cuts the small talk and tells the spirit he needs help finding something. The fish opens its mouth wide and pulls out a small wooden box. Sangun nudges it toward Choa, telling her to go ahead and open it. She's hesitant at first, but as the lid opens, a soft pink light spills out. Inside is a stunningly crafted hairpin, glowing with a gentle aura. Sangun explains it's a protective charm made from ancient peach wood to keep evil spirits away. Choa looks up in disbelief, asking if he's really giving something so beautiful to her. She's paralyzed by the gesture, her eyes welling up with tears. Before Sangun can say anything else, the little girl starts crying her eyes out. The big cat is completely caught off guard, wondering what he did wrong now. She manages to choke out that this is the first time anyone has ever given her a gift. She clutches the hairpin to her chest, overwhelmed by the first act of kindness she's ever known. With a peaceful smile, she promises to cherish it for the rest of her life. The pink charm sparkles in her hands, marking the start of her new life. Later that night, she's completely wiped out, snoring softly against Sangun's side. She rubs her face into his warm fur, finally feeling safe enough to sleep soundly. Sangun sits up with a start, clearly annoyed by the interruption to his sleep. Choa is already awake, giving him a big smile and asking her husband if he's finally up. He tells the little girl to get ready, as they have a long journey ahead of them. While Sangun waits, Choa starts stuffing as many supplies as she can into a bag. She looks up at him with wide, curious eyes, wondering what their next move is. Sangun keeps his thoughts to himself, dreading the idea of being tied to the girl's destiny. A mysterious voice chimes in, suggesting that maybe it's just her fate to become a sanbai. Sangun's red eyes flare, as he argues that he's got enough trouble to deal with on his own. The voice continues to mock him, calling the mighty tiger stubborn and inflexible like some petty guru. Sangun licks his chops, comparing the talkative spirit to a chattering sparrow that never shuts up. The spirit doesn't back down, snarking that tigers clearly don't get any smarter with age. Sangun's temper starts to boil over as he wonders why he's getting so riled up. He lets out a frustrated huff, demanding the unseen speaker show themselves. Choa stands ready with her bundle, completely oblivious to the supernatural bickering. Deep in another part of the forest, a heavy set of claws trudge through the rocky terrain. A massive black tiger with glowing yellow eyes and scars across its face prowls the ridge. The beast's gaze is sharp and focused as it surveys the misty mountain pass. It walks toward Warren, who is waiting in the shadows of a cave. The black tiger looks around the empty site, disappointed that no one else has arrived. He asks Warren if she actually told the others he was coming. He wonders if the local lord is purposely avoiding a confrontation with him. Warren calmly explains that the owner of Baeksin has no reason not to show. The black tiger lets out a booming laugh, convinced that Sangun is simply too scared to face him. He decides to stay put and lounge in the cozy spot while he waits for a fight. Warren sighs and rubs her head, telling the arrogant beast to quit laughing so much. Elsewhere on the mountain path, Chengdu-san and a young boy are making their way uphill. Suddenly, the trees begin to shake violently as something massive moves through the brush. Sangun emerges from the shadows, his presence instantly commanding the path. Chengdu-san moves like a flash, reaching out to pull the boy back and ordering him to stand clear. The elderly warrior and the tiger lock eyes, both ready for whatever comes next. The tension breaks when they realize Choa is sitting calmly on top of the tiger's head. Chengdu-san and the boy can only stare in pure confusion at the strange sight. Choa gives them a cheerful wave and a bright hello, completely at ease. The young boy waves back with a blush, stunned to see a girl riding a predator like a pony. He whispers to his master about the girl, while Chengdu-san decides they should just observe for a while. Night falls over the forest as a pair of deer graze peacefully in the blue moonlight. One of the deer stops to chew on some grass, totally unaware of the danger lurking nearby. In a blur of fur and fangs, Sangun lunges from the dark with a terrifying roar. He brings the prey down instantly, providing a meal for the group. Later, they sit around a campfire, where Chengdu-san grumbles about the lack of flavor in the meat. Choa and the young boy hit it off immediately, laughing and chatting while they prepare the food. A thick piece of venison sizzles over the hot flames, the fat dripping into the crackling fire. Choa stares at the cooked meat with stars in her eyes, her mouth watering in pure anticipation. Sangun notices her distraction and asks what she and the boy were talking about for so long. Choa wipes her mouth and happily explains that the boy, Baicheng, is her age and they've decided to be friends. Sangun repeats the name with a grunt, just as a loud, deep growl rumbles from someone's stomach. The massive tiger smirks, teasing the girl about how hungry she must be, which causes her face to turn beet red. Embarrassed and flustered, Choa stammers and tells him to just hurry up and eat so they can be done. Sangun remains unimpressed by her blabbering, insisting that she is clearly the hungry one. Choa points an accusing finger back at him, shouting that the sound definitely came from his belly. Licking his paw with a smug air, Sangun asks if she's only trying to fool him because she's so embarrassed. Choa reaches her breaking point, jumping up and yelling at the top of her lungs that she isn't hungry. Sangun gives her a skeptical look, nodding that with only the two of them there, it's impossible to hide the truth. Infuriated by his logic, Choa huffs and puffs with her cheeks blown out like a pouting child. She suddenly lunges for the fire, grabbing a massive meat bone with both hands. Choa sprints away into the dark forest, shouting that her husband is a total idiot as Sangun watches in confusion. As she runs, Warren's voice drifts through the shadows, mocking Sangun for his lack of understanding. Sangun remains calm, trusting that the magical peachwood hairpin will protect the child from the mountain's dangers. The spirit voice warns him that if the girl gets lost, it would simply be her destiny, a word that makes the tiger flinch. Warren asks him if it was also destiny that turned him into a beast, striking a chord with the powerful creature. As Sangun stares into the embers, the spirit suggests that he's being dishonest about his own feelings for the girl. He dismisses her words as nonsense, only to be interrupted by Chengdu-san drawing his ice-cold blade. Sangun turns his head in surprise as the old warrior's friendly facade completely vanishes. Chengdu-san announces his name and status, claiming he can sense a ghostly servant lurking by the tiger's side. A grim explanation reveals that a Changui is a soul enslaved by a tiger, cursed to lead other humans to the beast's maw. Sangun's eyes narrow as he realizes the warriors of Ganryun are every bit as sensitive to the supernatural as the stories say. Sangun finds this whole thing a nuisance. Purple smoke starts swirling as he calls his servant to come out. Warren materializes from the dark mist right behind him. Chung Dusan isn't backing down. He draws his sword, ready to claim a soul. The tiger just sighs and walks away, telling Warren to deal with the old man since he's her problem. Dusan yells at him for running off, but Warren is already blocking his path. She reaches for her jade pendant, telling him she'll be his opponent. A bright green light explodes from the necklace. She pulls a legendary jade treasure from the light, her eyes glowing with power. The old warrior recognizes it instantly. It's the whole stop cavity. He knows it's an otherworldly treasure that can trap anything, no matter how big. He's baffled that a simple ghost servant can handle something so powerful. Dusan narrows his eyes and asks if he can pose a question. He wants to know what that thing on her neck is. Warren just starts explaining the nature of gurus. She says they're experts who like to set up their own brand of justice. She smiles. Since their swords are already out, she figures they should let them do the talking. Dusan stares her down, ready for the clash. He moves first, using a dragon-shaped step that leaves white trails in the air. Multiple afterimages of the old man surround the ghost girl from every direction. He shouts that he's going to end her in a single strike. Warren doesn't even blink as he closes in. Clang, she blocks his heavy overhead blow effortlessly. Dusan can't believe it. He didn't expect her to catch a serious hit like that. She mocks him for being so sincere about hitting a girl, and says she'll start taking him a bit more seriously now. Her eye flares with purple energy. Close-up of the old man's eye as he realizes the tables have turned. A massive shockwave shatters the air when they clash again. The force of the blow sends a jolt right through his arm, making his hand shake. Warren isn't letting up. She presses the attack, her eyes glowing. They lock blades, sparks flying as the ground cracks beneath their feet. Dusan grunts, struggling against her overwhelming power. He tries to reposition with another quick step, but the earth shatters under him. She's right on top of him, telling him he's not getting away that easily. One final burst of power sends the old warrior skidding back through the dirt. His apprentice screams out for his master. Dusan tries to steady his sword, but his whole arm won't stop trembling. He's sweating, completely out of his league. He has to admit it, she's just too powerful. As Warren stands there glowing with energy, he wonders if she's really just a tiger's servant. Meanwhile, away from the chaos, Choa is just chilling on a rock under the moonlight. She's busy gnawing on a bone when a voice interrupts and asks if it's tasty. She looks up with her cheeks stuffed full like a squirrel. Sangun tells her it's getting chilly and they should head back to the fire, impressed by how well she eats. Choa gulps down the last of her food, satisfied. She turns away with a grumpy humph, while Sangun just watches her with a look of mild amusement. He decides it's time to move on, telling her she can stay if she wants, but he's heading out since trouble always follows this place. Choa's eyes go wide in shock. She didn't expect him to actually leave her behind. She panics and scrambles after him, calling for her husband to wait up. Sangun just keeps walking, thinking to himself that a kid is always going to act like a kid. Suddenly, he freezes in his tracks, his eyes narrowing as he senses something in the dark. Choa doesn't stop in time and slams right into his leg with a loud ouch. She rubs her sore nose, asking him why he had to stop so suddenly. He doesn't answer, just tells her to be quiet while he stares into the shadows. His eyes glow a fierce red as he demands whoever is hiding to come out. A cold, high-pitched snicker echoes through the tall grass, answering his call. Choa clings to Sangun's fur, her face pale as she looks out into the darkness. A voice rings out from the mist, demanding he leave the girl behind and walk away if he wants to stay alive. Sangun's expression hardens as he analyzes the threat. He recognizes the aura. It's a high-level phantom spirit, and he knew they'd come eventually, just not this soon. The tiger bares his teeth, making a split-second decision. He asks the spirit if it can promise to let him live if he hands over the child right now. Choa looks up at him in utter disbelief, her heart sinking at the question. The phantom spirit laughs, agreeing to the deal since there are plenty of other tigers to hunt anyway. Choa can barely whisper the word, husband, as the spirit repeats its command for Sangun to leave. The tiger doesn't even look at her, he just coldly tells her to let go. She starts to cry, begging for another chance and promising she won't be a burden if he just stays. He roars at her to shut up, telling her their brief meeting isn't worth his life. With a sharp movement, he releases her hand and tells her to just accept her fate. Choa stares at him, her world completely shattering in an instant. He walks away into the night without a second look, leaving her alone on the cliffside. She watches his massive form vanish into the darkness, unable to even scream. That's when the phantom spirit reveals himself, a tall, ghoulish blue figure wreathed in green flames, ecstatic to find a legendary white-blooded ghost. Meanwhile, back at the campfire, Chung Dusan asks H. Warren if she understands the weight of what's happening. H. Warren meets his gaze, telling him she doesn't expect him to believe her, but they aren't the ones trying to hurt the child. The old warrior stays quiet for a moment, processing her words while still on guard. He finally sheathes his sword, admitting that he has no choice but to believe her for now. H. Warren smiles knowingly, commenting that ignoring your own doomed fate is the height of foolishness. Dusan asks what brings them to these mountains, explaining that he was just training with his disciple on a pilgrimage route. H. Warren looks skeptical, pointing out that there isn't a single pilgrimage site in this entire area. The old man stands up, mentioning that he actually came here after hearing a troubling rumor. He explains that in this region, the chief Yasas are all being killed in a very mysterious way. H. Warren's interest is piqued, and she asks him to tell her everything. Dusan describes the gruesome findings: spirits with their limbs severed and their stomachs torn open, as if the killer was searching for something specific. H. Warren repeats the words, her mind racing as she tries to connect the dots to a potential ritual. Suddenly, a wave of cold dread washes over both of them as they sense something terrible happening nearby. In another part of the forest, Chung Dusan and H. Warren witness a strange green light flickering through the dense trees. H. Warren looks toward the source of the aura, her expression tightening as she senses the malevolence behind it. At the cliff, the phantom spirit's great sword vibrates, the rings on the blade rattling as he fixates on his prey. He towers over the small girl, marveling at the fact that he's found a white-blooded ghost, a creature extinct for 200 years. A monstrous glowing grin splits his face as he revels in his sheer luck. He extends a long, ghoulish hand toward her, dark smoke swirling around his fingertips. Choa looks up with wide, terrified eyes, framed by the monster's silhouette as he commands her to come to him.